Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and well, a butterfly came out.
And I have to say to all of the people watching here tonight or
Uh-huh.
today, right,
Yep.
subscribe to this channel.
Welcome to the Comedians and Elevators podcast. I've got my guest, John Saxon. John, say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Right. Hi. I'm John E with an E, Saxon, not to be confused with the really important actor John Saxon, who appeared in Nightmare on Elm Street and uh, a lot of other films, about 190, I believe. I was educated in Malta, Zambia, and the United Kingdom. I've spent 14 years living in France, but essentially I'm English. And I started off life as a electronics engineer on Vulcan bombers during the Cold War. I'm 75 years old, so I'm not a spring chicken. Um, and then I decided I wasn't going to have anything to do with electronics, so I built my own business up, which was a consultancy business, and I retired at the age of 54 to go and live in France. Totally self-sufficient, the good life with chickens, sheep, ducks, all sorts of things, and grew all my own vegetables for 14 years. And I came back to the UK and I moved here about 3.5 years ago into the Welsh Valleys, which is one of the most beautiful parts of the United Kingdom. It's just 3 miles down the road from Tintern Abbey. And my partner said to me, "Why don't you get yourself a hobby?" And I said, "Doing what?" She said, "Well, playing bridge or doing this or doing that." I said, "No, I don't want to associate with old folk." She said, "Well, look," she said, "you're quite photogenic." She said, "You've still got all your hair. And guess what?" She said, "You're still alive. Why don't you take up acting or modeling?" So I thought about it for about a week and I decided to become an actor. And thus far, I've been in 4 feature films, two of them with major dialogue. One's called The Seventh Man, which is now available on Reveal, if I can plug that. Um, it's a gangster film, like Guy Ritchie gangster film. Everybody gets killed, including me. And I've appeared in a lot of shorts. I've appeared on TV and in major TV programs like The Forsytes, Young Sherlock. Forsytes is an American production. The last thing I appeared on was USA versus Raj, which is a film about a guy who was arrested in America and kept in prison for 3.5 years without charge. When they took him to court, he was found innocent of all charges. So he sued the American government and now he's making a film about it. And I was a
Wow.
Vietnam veteran who was protesting outside court for his freedom. So that's my day-to-day life. Other than that, I just assist my partner with editing her videos and developing a website. She's a consultant as well. Both of us are in our 70s and we just haven't given up yet. It's all in the mind, you know.
It is. It
Okay.
is. Well, speaking of in the mind, are you ready to get started, John?
What I can give it a go, yes.
Okay. Listen, to my regular listeners, I know you don't like when at the beginning of these conversations I ask you to subscribe. None of us like it. I don't like saying it. I don't like it being in here. But it's frustrating. You know what else is frustrating? It's also frustrating when I look in the back end of the YouTube channel and I see that 56% of you that watch frequently haven't yet subscribed. And I know this because I see it in the comments section. You say things like, "I didn't know I didn't subscribe." And that's actually what fuels the show. Basically, it's like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask all the time, because it enables us to build and build and build, and we're going for the long term here. Hit the subscribe button and we'll continue to build this show for you. That's my promise. Thank you to all you guys that do subscribe. It means the world to me. So the whole point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian. So
Yeah.
I define the comic as any person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who's a funny person telling any jokes. So John, would you agree that you start as a comic and evolve into a comedian?
I'm a storyteller really, rather than a comic. And I agree with the comic. You've got Ricky Gervais. I think he's a comic, and then you got Jerry Lewis, who is a character. And
Mhm.
without that character, he's not really. He does funny things. Is that what you mean?
That's one way. Another way of saying is that the comedian is internal and the comic is external. Would you see it that way as well?
Right. Yeah. In that sense, I agree with you. It seems a bit of a juxtaposition there because I think one can evolve into the other either way. They start off as a comic and then they. I think there was a famous magician in the UK. He started off as a comic telling jokes, and he was a straight magician, but all his tricks went wrong. So he eventually took on the persona of a pathetic, useless comedian, magician, who then didn't have to tell any jokes. The fact that his tricks went wrong were funny enough. So
That's great.
it's
I mean, that's how you figure it out, right? So that leads us into the first question, which is about the role of persona in comedy. So, how much of the comedian's voice is a character versus their real self?
I don't know. I mean, I've looked at a lot of comedians, and their voice doesn't match them when you see them being interviewed at the Oscars, the
Hmm.
few that get there, or you see them in real life, then they do put on this sort of voice. I mean, I do some voiceover acting, and I've got voices, and I become that. So it's sort of a twist round. It's when you use a voice, you become the persona,
Hmm.
rather than the persona has a voice. Does that make sense?
Okay. Well, I mean, technically it makes sense if you're doing voiceover work and they don't, visually you're not there. Is that what you're referring to? Visually is not you're not there?
Yeah, because what I discovered is, for instance, I did some voiceover work as a Cornish fisherman. Now, a Cornish fisherman speaks like this. No, he doesn't. That's an Irish. Cornish fisherman. I moved my parts from down there. They got really parts, you know, they extend the vowel. Uh, and as soon as I start to get into that, it becomes an earworm.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Oh yeah, I know.
I'm stuck with it, but I'm also stuck with I'm a Cornish fisherman for a
I
while.
mean, yeah, absolutely. That does make a lot of sense. Is you're taking so that's I would say the comedian perspective, right? Instead of maybe dressing up as a fisherman and kind of externalizing it, you do it from the audio, from the sound, from the internal way.
Yeah.
All right. So how about punching up versus punching down? So where do comics versus comedians subscribe to this? And let me put it in some historical context. Did a jealous medieval prince become the first comedian by killing the court jester?
Yes. I've heard you say that a couple of times, and I just still don't understand that one. But punching up, punching down. See, Ricky Gervais will punch, well, he punches up at God, but he punches down at a lot of people, and he can really upset people, and he doesn't care about that.
Mhm.
So, but I prefer comedians who punch up from a
Even if
personal point of view.
even if he's punching up to God,
Oh yeah, yeah, it's okay because I can still
he
smile,
can take it.
even though my belief is completely opposite to his. Yes, I can still smile. So
Do you
that's
think he
that's
really, so you think he's an atheist? Is that, or he's just pretending to be?
no, I think he is.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think he's pretending to be. He said it so many times. I don't think he.
It'd be
I,
hard to pull it
you
off
know,
if not.
if he was a believer and he believed, he wouldn't risk it by pretending to be an atheist all the time.
Well, that's why I asked because maybe that there's something there about risking it, right? Because there's different ways of being to believe is that it's not a risk because of where, what the topic is. So, yeah, there's different ways of looking at it. So, right?
Yeah.
You're like, well, I mean, I will be forgiven, so I might as well, take the opportunity while I'm on earth. So, would you say the audience agreement with the comedian is a form of permission or alignment?
If they're agreeing with it, yeah, I think it's a form of permission, really. and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I saw a thing with Billy Connolly, you know, the Scots guy, Billy Connolly,
Hmm.
yeah, and he was doing a thing in America, and he started on about Native Americans, and he really started pulling them apart, and people in the audience were literally walking out.
Right.
And
Well,
then he
I'm
was,
not familiar with that skit, so
yeah,
as
no,
I keep the hunting down.
it was painful to watch,
Right.
you know, because he just got it so wrong. It was like nobody laughed, and a massive number of the audience walked out. And I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt angry at him because I thought a
Mm.
professional like him should know better than to punch down at that sort of audience. And it just, yeah, just didn't work.
He didn't take the high road like the U.S. Army and name their helicopters after the vanquished, like Black Hawk and Kiowa. That's the
No.
way, at least
Beady,
that's
beady,
one way
beady,
you look at it.
beady.
Hey, if we're gonna kill them, we might as well name them in honor. So, which is true.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
all
yeah.
right, how about love and justice? So, is the highest function of comedy to expose injustice or to make people feel less alone while living with it?
Ooh. I think the higher role of some comics, I love observational comedy.
Okay.
Right, so comedy where people look at life and they observe what's going on and then they make absolute fun of it. And at this moment in time, and I'll have the police coming round when you put this on air, probably because I'm in the UK at the moment, you
And
know,
things are new
two,
world order.
2,300 people arrested for putting naughty Facebook and X comments on and stuff like that. But at this moment in time, free speech isn't an option in the UK. Sorry if I shouldn't maybe say that. Um, but
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I'm a
so
free
no,
speech activist, so please
yeah.
do.
So I think the whole point of comedians and observational comedians, particularly, is literally to point out injustice in the world, but in a way that gets people, you know, British comedy is slightly different, and well, it's very different to some other um, sort of people, but it's slightly different to American comedy. And um, we tend to be more cynical. Or, well, I say more cynical. I've seen some American comics who are very cynical, very critical of the government and everything else. But this is going on a daily basis in the UK. So I think, I believe, from my point of view, that comics who expose injustice are doing a good job, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So how about when a joke harms someone unintentionally? Does love demand accountability or does justice demand defiance?
I think love demands an accountability. I think if the comic has literally laid down a bad joke and it's really upset somebody. There's a recent thing. Listen to Ricky Gervais, and I don't know the exact story, but there's a disabled lady. She's got cerebral palsy. She's a comedian, and
Hmm.
she was saying something, and the Disabled Society in England said you can't say that about people. Because you're not mentally disabled, you're
Um,
physically disabled. And Ricky Gervais said so that what they've said to her isn't is she's not disabled, she's a spastic. In other
well,
words, they, as the disabled society in England, actually insulted her um, because she was telling a joke and making the joke on herself, but apparently she used the wrong terminology for her disability, and it's just ridiculous. So
well, that's
sometimes,
where that's where the humor is, of course, right? That's kind of alluding to why I'm doing the comic versus comedian because there is a difference, but it's so subtle that it's almost absurd.
It is, yeah, and people don't realise that observational comedians, and observational humour is very different to just a joke. Like guy walks into a bar and all this lot. That's the sort of humour I'm not bothered about because I've heard them at 75. I've heard them all before. There are
But you haven't
very
heard about but have you heard about the guy watching the guy walk into the bar?
no, Tommy.
I don't know. I got to come up with it. I was just checking if
Yeah,
there was
right,
something.
you got to work that one out. No, I was talking about the blind guy who walks into the bar and he says to the barman, "Give me a beer, please." And then he said, "Have you heard this blonde joke?" And the barman says to him, "No." He said, "Now, just before you start this blonde joke," he said, "I've got to tell you, this is a blonde pub and there's 19 blondes stood round you ready to kill you."
Oh,
He said, "Are you still going to tell the joke?" And the bloke says, "No." He says, "Oh, you given up, have you?" He said, "No, I just don't want to explain it 19 times."
aha. There you go. That's the way to do it.
There you
That's like
go.
kind of like no, it is. It's kind of like saying, "Did you hear about the joke of the blind guy?" Wait, no. Did you see the blind? Wait, did you hear about the joke where the blind guy saw it? Well, I'll figure it out. All right. Very important question. Advertising and self-promotion. Who advertises themselves more? The comic, the comedian, or the magician? You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast to get the message out today. See you soon.
Who advertises themselves more?
Mm-hmm.
Advertising and promotion. Who advertises themselves more? Um, I think probably the comic, the joke teller,
Mm.
because he has to, or she has to keep it out there, has to keep it out there. Whereas the comedian, um, you see, a comic won't get a part in a film. A comedian, as a persona, could. You take Benny Hill, for instance. He got a part in um, The Italian Job because of his comedian work on TV. You've heard of Benny Hill?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he got a major role in The Italian Job because of his TV work. He didn't have to advertise that. They asked him if he'd do it. He said he would do it. Apparently, he was very humble as well while he was doing it. He was really awestruck that he was on a film, a major feature film. But a comic, I think, has to keep advertising themselves. They have to keep doing tours. They have to keep doing, yeah. So I think that they have it harder to promote themselves because the comedian might have two or three different facets. Um, so
So you
I
don't,
don't know. And the
yeah.
position, the magician, I don't, not sure.
So you don't see self promotion as selling out?
Nah, no,
Oh,
you've got to promote yourself. I mean, everybody who comes on your podcast is promoting themselves in effect.
yes,
That's
exactly.
why we're online. We're promoting ourselves. There's over promotion and overconfidence and all that, but generally, no, we all promote ourselves.
Over promotion. So you're saying like can you give an example?
For what? Promotion.
Over promote. You said over promotion, like promoting too much.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
was up, well, I was on set um, on the Foresights, and there was a guy there who all the time he couldn't stop talking.
Okay.
He literally just wouldn't stop, and he had this gathering of younger people round him, sort of in the 1920s, 25 or so, who were on their very first um, feature program. And it's an American funded thing, Foresights. And it's, I can't remember where it's shown in America, but it's just gone through its first series. It's starting its second. And he was talking about how he was in Star Wars, how he was in this, how he was in that, how he was in the other, and
Yeah.
how, all these famous stars were his friends and all this. And it just got to the point after 4 days of it. And
Oh.
I just absolutely let go at him and just said, will you, for goodness sake, shut up. I
Yeah.
said, it's all. And then I met him outside and he was talking to somebody else and he said, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. He said, actually, I'm ADHD. I went, that's it. You're ADHD. I said, my son's ADHD. I said, that's why you can't bloody stop talking. Sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's true. It makes
Yeah,
sense.
I
Whenever they
said,
ask what's my pronoun, I say I'm asymmetrical. So that's usually it.
asymmetrical.
So how about censorship and offense? So does a comic avoid offense while a comedian courts it to prove a point, like a magician?
Does a comic avoid offense? No, I think a comic goes more for offense and a comedian goes less for offense.
Okay.
Censorship, we can't talk about that in England.
You can't even talk about that's hilarious. Like literally the topic is censored. Censorship is censored as a topic. It's
Censorship is
amazing.
censored. Yeah. George Orwell said it
Hilarious.
all, and I mean it's incredible. You get people, you get police turning up at people's doors and saying, "Were you at that protest rally the other day?" Seriously.
Yeah.
And now everybody records what comes to their home, and it's two police people, and they just say, "For it's a bloody good job they don't have guns here." I don't know
Well,
what would
not at the
happen.
protest. That's only in America.
Yeah,
We take it to an
well,
extreme. We want to push the history. We're like, wait, this hasn't been done before, so let's argue about it by doing it. So then
yeah,
who survives better in a cancel culture environment? The comic, the comedian, the magician, or the mudslinger?
the mudslinger.
Right?
That's a simple answer. But in a cancel culture, there are so many things. Some of the most wonderful British sitcoms that have ever been made that you took in America and you remade them in America. Um, I think Archie Bunker was based on one of the on a British sitcom and all this. They're all banned now from TV because they are offensive and you can't talk about them. It's just ridiculous. So it's a cancel culture. And I think the mudslinger is the only one probably who can survive, although people will go round to the door and knock on it.
Maybe there's going to be a school or a university where a cinematic, filmmaking, where you can watch these movies, the ones that we have long forgotten. That once we stop talking about them, no one will know they existed, and at least we'll have a library, hopefully in the future. That's not funny, but I'm hoping that maybe something I'll invest in. So, how about timing and delivery? Is it a science or an art?
It's a bit of both. For the person analyzing it, it's a science. For the person doing it, it's a learned art, which comes, I think, through experience. As I say, I'm a storyteller, and so I'll tell a story and I'll get to, but they're always real. They're always absolutely real. And I'll get to the end and then I'll maybe pause, maybe not pause or whatever. And I'm not saying I'm the best in the world, but I usually get a laugh. Whereas a novice will bring the punchline in too early or won't quite get it right or stumble over it or whatever. So I think it's a science from the person watching it because they can analyze that and go, oh, they've really fluffed up there. Or, but from the person doing it, it's um, a learned experience,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think you're the first person, 130 episodes that actually has answered that question better than I can imagine, which is great. Yeah, I didn't even think of it that way, but I 100% agree. I think that I didn't think there was an answer until you said this, and now I'm like, oh, there is an answer to this question, and you found it. I like it. All right.
Hell,
So how about
I said to somebody the other day, I said, look, at 75 years old, I've experienced more things than most people, and I intend to keep going. So maybe that was it. Something put the answer in there.
I I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I mean, oh, as I get older, I'm doing the same thing. So, okay,
Yeah.
laughter versus applause. So, are comics chasing laughs and comedians chasing applause breaks, or a primetime Emmy that validate the message?
I think comics are chasing laughs, comedians are chasing audience enjoyment. They're trying to give the audience, I think, well, comics as well, they're trying to give the audience something that'll say, hey, I felt good when I was watching that. Primetime Emmys, no, it's just not there. Some people will, most people won't.
Well, you kept saying Ricky Gervais, so I would think he'd be one that'd be chasing that.
Yeah, I mean, I put a little list down here. I put Ricky Gervais and Billy Connolly observational.
Okay.
Spike Milligan is one of my favorite. Do you know my father he was in the Air Force during the war, and he was in a thing which they only recognise as a special forces about 20 years ago, unfortunately after he passed away. But he used to go behind enemy lines and pick up pilots that had crashed and then destroy the aircraft. But he was in exactly the same place, Tobruk, El Alamein, Salerno, and Monte Cassino as Spike Milligan at exactly the same time. And well, obviously didn't meet him, but I used to think Spike Milligan was one of the most incredible surreal comics ever. He was actually probably mentally disturbed. Monty Python, and then I don't know if you've heard of these. Have you heard of Ismo?
No.
He is a Finnish guy. He moved to America. He was voted when he moved to America and he went no thing. He was voted as the funniest person in the world,
Hmm.
right? Ismo Licola, and then Marcel Lucon is a French guy, and he does a thing called wine in a can. He goes, wine in a can. For a French person, wine in a can. Eh, la. You just don't
Well,
touch it. And
I mean, I
then
haven't even seen that here, so
oh, it's just go onto YouTube, look up wine in a can. It's just brilliant. And look up Ismo. He makes so much fun of the English when he arrived. And he makes fun of Americans, and they love it, and we love it. And it's how we speak, apparently how we phrase things. He is so um it literally dissects the way we phrase things and tells us how stupid it is. It's incredible. Anyway,
yeah. All right.
what was the
So,
question?
well, John, so are you ready to enter the multiverse?
Right.
Okay. Board game Zoomcast, play versus performance. So, if comedy were a board game Zoomcast and you have to choose an avatar, are you competing as the colorist, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing?
I would be the colorist.
Okay.
I would be the colorist. Basically, believe it or not, when I get on set, if I haven't got a major part, I'm in the background, but I'm also always aware of what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
that definitely.
that is
So,
what I do best. I know I'm on screen now and I'm on camera and I'm expected to talk, so I'm talking, but 99% of the time I just stay stum. I don't say a lot, but I observe. And that's what gives stories,
mhm,
observational humor.
yeah,
Then I'll
it gives
come
it
back,
color.
I'll tell Susie, my partner, some of the things that happened, and she'll chuckle. And I'll say, oh, it's incredible. But it's only when, yeah, so I would be the type of guy who stands in the background and says very little but takes everything in. I'm a human sponge.
I like it. So then, does comedy work better when it's painted vividly or when it's orchestrated sonically?
Painted vividly or orchestrated sonically. Depends what kind of comedy.
Okay, that makes sense.
If it's just a one-liner or a short joke, like I just said about the 19 blondes and all this lot, it's sonically. There's nothing to do with it. But if it's a longer story, um, and there's a nice punchline, and you've got to get the audience involved, then you've got to paint it vividly. That doesn't mean painting it. It means painting it. I wouldn't have said vividly. I would have said expressively. Painting it expressively so that you draw them in. And then once they're in there, you go, wah.
All right. So, here on the Comedians in Elevators podcast, we have a tradition where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest. And the previous guest was Jen Henry. And her question for you, John, is when you do interviews, what is a question you wish more people would ask?
Do you want a drink?
Say again?
Do you want a drink?
Do you want a drink? Okay. All right.
If I was doing if, yeah,
All
if
right.
no, I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, not wine in a can.
Not wine in a
Oh,
can. We know that
not
one.
wine in a can. What's a nice question that they should ask me? I don't know, because again, when you've got a lot of life experience, you just think, oh God, no, don't ask me about that one. Or do the questions that I don't want people to ask me is, how are you?
Of course. Pointless questions.
Um, you doing okay?
Yeah. Assuming you're
Have you,
not, right?
have you been out jogging today? You
Well, that's
must
more
be joking.
specific.
You know, so there are various questions I don't want people to ask me. What question would I really want somebody to ask me? Uh, no, I think,
Well, you got,
what would you like to drink would be the best question.
and you can't have wine in a can. All right.
I'd
So
I'd probably just say, look, give me a nice hot black coffee with 2 sugar, and that will suit me.
nice. All right. So last question, John. So legacy. Who gets remembered? Will the comics Tight Five survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
Right. I think comics are remembered, but I think comics would only be remembered for maybe 1 or 2 jokes. That's it. If I said to you, tell me a Bob Hope joke, uh, but was Bob Hope a comic? Yeah. But you say comedian, they'll be remembered for what they did. Does that make sense? So they
It
they
does.
they would. I remember Billy Connolly for the way for the way he strutted about the stage when he was talking about the Ugandan national anthem was much better than the English national anthem. He said British national anthem, God save our gracious. He said the other ones, we're from Uganda, we don't give up. And he's marching around the stage. And so I remember all of these things that, yeah, Billy Connolly, because he was that persona of this wild guy. So the person who'd be remembered the most, I think, for what they did is the comedian.
All right. Awesome. So, John, where can everybody find you online?
Where can everybody find me online? I have an IMDb profile under Johnny Saxon. They can find me on LinkedIn under John Saxon. And I also have a political Facebook page under John E. Saxon, which may not suit most people, and it's probably going to get me arrested, but still. And that's where people can find me. And it's been a
Awesome.
real pleasure being on this, and I've enjoyed it. I said to my partner, I'm really nervous. And she said, why? I said, because if you don't get nervous, you don't care about the audience.
That's right. That's true.
Oh,
To a
and
point. You don't know.
I have to say to all of the people watching here tonight or today, right? Subscribe to this channel.
That would be awesome. That's what I was going to say myself. I was going to.
I know you were going to say it, and I just think people should subscribe to the channel. You know, get those subscribers in.
Yes. Well, John, thank you so much. Thank you for being my guest, and for everyone, please like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one. If you're interested in too much information like in the network state or Mantipus the chicken shit, check out this video. Or is it this one right here? Well, either way. Lizard.